be seated. Let's take a few minutes to just look at this psalm. So, if you have noticed, this psalm is all about singing, praising, clapping, shouting, not just singing. Normally, it says shout to God with loud songs of joy. And if you look at verses 6 and 7, just in two verses, it talks about sing praises, sing praises, sing praises. So it's more like a chorus of a song. It's commanding, it's inviting everybody to come and sing praises to Him because He reigns over all the earth. Now, if you look at the context of this psalm, it's probably is verse 3 and 4 where it says, He subdued peoples under us and nations under our feet. He chose our heritage for us, the pride of Jacob whom He loves. Probably this was a time where during the conquest of Canaan, Israel came out of Egypt, they took over the land of Canaan after 40 years and they subdued those nations, and that is when probably this was written. And when we think about war and victories, it's not like the Braves game. This is something different in that context. Every nation had their own deities. So when they won a war over one nation, they're basically saying, our God won over yours. So if you look at Canaan, Canaan was ruled mainly by the Baal or Baal as we call it. So when God took over these lands and nations, God is ruling over them. So in verse 2, 3 and 4 it talks more like God subdued these nations. Now you nations, your God is nothing. Our God has ruled over yours. So sing, shout and praise the Lord. But if you look at the starting of the psalm, it is not just Israel who is praising. The invitation is clap your hands all peoples. Shout to God with loud songs of joy. He's a great king over all the earth. So if you look at this psalm, it is not just Israel, it is not just the nations that they defeated, but this invitation is for the whole world, all the earth, all peoples. So what we see here is the psalmist is looking forward to something. In a technical way, this has an eschatological view there. It's looking forward to something. And I just want to look at we looked at why they were praising, what is the context of it, but it also is looking forward, inviting all nations to worship. And what is the content of this psalm? It's inviting people to come and rejoice. It's saying sing, praise. One content of it is verse 8. If you look at verse 8, it says, God reigns over the nations. God sits on His holy throne. It is not saying God reigns over Israel. It's not saying God reigns over the nations in Canaan. It says over the nations, and earlier we read over all the earth. It's about everything, and He reigns over the nations and He sits on His holy throne. When it talks about holy throne, and if you have seen the verse 5, it says He has gone up with a shout. It's basically ascending. So it's talking about the heavenly throne here. So God is sitting in the heavenly throne and He is ruling over all the earth. And that is the content of this psalm, why they are worshiping this God and why He is worthy to be praised. When we look at God reigning, we know the attribute, the sovereignty of God. It is such a beautiful attribute, but sometimes it's very difficult to grasp it because we don't know how the sovereignty of God and the human responsibility works together. But this is so evident in the Bible. I've heard one preacher say, his name is Stephen Lawson, he said, if you take the Bible, keep it upside down, close your eyes and sit in a dark room, that's the only way you can miss the sovereignty of God in the Bible. His point is, if you read the Bible, you can never miss that there is a sovereignty of God. There is a God who is working in the midst of all these things that happens. From this psalm, I want to look at three levels at which the sovereignty of God is explained here. So you can see this as three concentric circles. Okay, first is a small circle, then a bigger one, and a much bigger one after that. The smaller circle is the one we discussed in the beginning, verse 3 and 4. God was conquering nations for Israel. So they were looking at as God is giving the victory over many things. He is reigning over all these nations. And the second circle, if you want to look at it, as if we come to verse 9, it talks about the princes of the peoples gather as the people of the God of Abraham. You all know that whenever we say God of Abraham, it's always about Israel, because the nation started there. But if you look at the promises of Abraham, it is not just for Israel. We read in New Testament, understanding it, it is for Gentiles and the blessings of Abraham. We are all children, descendants of Abraham by faith. So it goes to, it has expanded further. It is not just nation of Israel and the nations they captured, but the blessings of Abraham is even wider. And what we see there is more of a redemptive plan. When God gave Abraham this promise, initially nobody understood what that actually meant, but that was for all the nations, everybody. So one is the God reigning over Israel and the nations. The other circle is God working in history for his redemptive plan. God, the gospel, the new covenant, what we see in the New Testament is the same promise that is given to Abraham. Abraham believed in God and it was credited to him as righteousness. And if you go to Galatians and Romans, Paul explains it. Even we believe in God and that is credited to us as our righteousness. You see a bigger plan, God's redemptive plan. It is not like, okay, God chose Abraham, it's not working out. Then he picks David, and then he picks Moses, then David, then all these people, and finally he sends, let me send my son, let me see how it works out. It is not that God is planning. He planned all this even before the foundations of the world. And if you read Ephesians 1, you can see you were chosen. Who were chosen? It is written to people who were Jews and Gentiles. And it says you were chosen even before the foundations of the world. So you see God working through history in making this redemptive plan work. So he is reigning over the history, making this redemption work out in the life. And other thing that you see here in verse 9 itself is, it says the princes and the people gather. And why are they gathering? They're gathering to worship the Lord. Now in this church we have few of us worshiping God. If you go out to the street, not everybody worship. But we know that there's a time that's coming when every nation, every knee and the tongue will confess that Christ is Lord. There is a time that is coming. We call that as the consummation. Or in simple words, if you want to relate to, we can say there is a glorification that's going to happen. God is going to reign. God is going to come back. And everybody is going to worship. God reigns. God reigned in the conquest of Canaan. God has been reigning, bringing this redemption plan, working through the history. He has not stopped. He's still working. And the end will happen. What is it for us? That means he's working through everything that is happening even right now. And he is not sleeping right now. He is still reigning. He is still working through this history, and everything that is happening is within his control. He has allowed things to happen. He has caused things to happen, but everything is in control. When we go to Romans 8, the words that we all know, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. What is all things? Above you can see even the sufferings, even the bad things that is going on in this world. God can change all these things, and he's putting this all together. He's working through all these things so that it's for your good. What is good here? You will be conformed to be more like Christ. And he's working through all this. Until when? And that's what we read in 30. Those whom he predestined, he also called. Those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. Until that happens, he is still reigning. He is still controlling. Now, why did I say this? What is the application of this? When we go through different scenarios in our lives, whether whatever sufferings that we have, emotional, mental, or we are losing even the loved ones, like Pastor was explaining, we witnessed what's going on in different families. But even in the midst of all this, God is reigning. We need to patiently believe in it and wait on it. Many things we don't even understand. And even Israel did not understand what is happening. But we know in history, God stirred some Persian king's heart to bring those people back. Nobody ever imagined. And when we are here, we are in the third circle. We are waiting for that glorification. And God will bring it to pass. He's working through everything that is happening. And that is our confidence. And that is the only comfort that we can have in this world, because God is in control. If God is not in control, you should not even pray, because there's no point, because He is also sitting just like you and thinking what is happening in this world. This is such an important thing about God that we need to understand. And we started with Psalm. We said it is all rejoicing, singing, and everything. In verse 7 it says, sing praise with a psalm. If you see the footnote of some of the Bibles, it says a maskil. It is more of a contemplative thing. It is something that you have to think and write. It is not something you write something. You think about God, you contemplate that, then you put it in words and you then sing together. Why did they sing it together? As I said, this was probably something that was written many years back. When they compiled the psalm, they included all this here. Why did they include this? So that when we come together, we sing about God. There is a God who is reigning over everything. So that when we go through the situations, we are reminded, not just on Sundays, but other days, oh, we sang this. And this is a reminder of who God is. And that is one reason why we have to be very careful what we are singing. We are singing about God, and it has to be the truths about God, His love, His mercy. When we are singing the Malayalam songs, but it is reminding there is a God who is taking care of you. There's a God who can change your situations. So you can submit under the hand of God, because He is working through all these things. We come together and sing so that we are reminded of these truths. And that is what one of the purposes of singing is. Let us remember who God is, and the God who reigns over everything. Spurgeon has said these words, you may be familiar with this. When you go through a trial, the sovereignty of God is a pillow upon which you lay your head. Because you're trying to answer a lot of questions, you cannot make any sense of it. The only thing that makes sense that time is, oh Lord, we know that you reign, you're reigning over all these scenarios, all these situations, whatever things is going on. And you are good, you have a perfect purpose for me, you are changing me, and you are going to glorify me at the end. And this is the confidence we have. Let us trust in the Lord and submit to Him and be submissive to His control over our life. God bless you.